Almost Skinnybones, Chapter 2. The next morning, after breakfast, we headed for the studio. I was planning to take a limousine, but as soon as we were out of the hotel door, my parents started to walk. "What? Are you crazy?" I yelled, hurrying along behind them. "Celebrities don't walk to work. They ride in limos. Come on, Mom, Dad, this is embarrassing. I bet the Fruit of the Loom guys don't have to trot to the studio behind their parents." The trouble with the streets of New York City is that even when you're yelling stuff at the top of your lungs, there's so much honking going on, your parents can't hear you. Also, there's so many people on the sidewalk, if you don't concentrate on where you're going, you could get swept away with the crowd and end up in New Jersey. It was exciting and scary all at the same time. New York City reminds me a little bit of the zoo. A lot of people look like they should be on the endangered species list. In just 3 blocks, I saw a girl with a ring through her nose, a lady pushing a poodle in a stroller, and a guy wearing a cardboard box. When we finally arrived at the TV studio, we had to check in with a security guard before we could go up to the studio. "Name," he said to me. I stood up straight as I could. "Just tell them Alex Frankovich is here," I announced, feeling very important. He checked off my name and looked up. What a thrill. Once we were allowed to pass, we walked down a long marble hallway to the elevator. When the doors opened, a boy about my age strolled off. You could just tell by the way he walked that he was somebody special, somebody you should know. As he passed, I studied his face. "Hey," I blurted suddenly, "I know who you are. You're the kid on that dessert commercial, the creamy, dreamy pudding that melts in your mouth. Pudding boy, am I right? You're Pudding boy." Slowly, the boy turned around and pretended to shoot me with his finger. "You got it, Frederick," he replied coolly. He blew away the smoke from his imaginary gun and put it back in his pocket. Then he spun around and strolled away. "Wow," I exclaimed as the elevator doors closed. "Pudding boy, was that cool or what?" "That guy was cool," mimicked my father. My mother frowned. "He called you Frederick." "Yeah, what a crazy guy," I laughed. "What a kidder." "That guy was cool," repeated Dad, who was starting to get on my nerves. When we got off the elevator, we were greeted by 2 men. One was from the Kitty Fritters Company. The other was the director of the commercial, Mr. Rose. I hate to say this, but Mr. Rose was a major disappointment. He didn't look like a director at all. He didn't have a French beret or sunglasses or anything. He was wearing a sweatshirt and running shoes. It's like he just got out of bed and thought it was Saturday. "Aha," he exclaimed, pumping my arm up and down. "You must be Alexander." It sounded funny. Alexander's my real name, but no one ever calls me that. I was named after Alexander Graham Bell, the phone guy. My parents do this sort of thing all the time. They name you after something great and hope you'll turn out great yourself. It doesn't work, though. It doesn't usually work, though. Usually, you just end up as an ordinary person with a stupid name like Abraham Lincoln Beerbaum, or in my case, Alexander Bell Frankovich. After a name like that, even the nickname Skinnybones doesn't sound that bad. Finally, Mr. Rose released my hand. "Well, we're on a pretty tight schedule today, so we better get started. Mom and Dad can have a seat in the back of the studio, and I'll take our young actor friend with me." Mr. Rose led me over to the set. A set is a fake place in the studio where the commercial is actually filmed. Sometimes it's a fake living room or a schoolroom. In this case, it was a fake kitchen. Fake kitchens are very popular sets for pet food commercials. I'm not sure why, though. We feed our cat outside. She only gets to eat inside if there's a hurricane. My mother says that the cat food makes the kitchen smell like a stink hole. Anyway, we weren't on the set for more than 2 minutes before Mr. Rose cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Makeup!" Then, before I knew it was happening, this blonde lady came bounding from out of nowhere, plunked me down in a kitchen chair, and started putting gook all over my face. It happened so quickly it made my head spin. I didn't even have time to relax in my dressing room, or get a back rub, or sit in a jacuzzi. And besides, even though I knew I'd have to wear makeup, I sure didn't want it to happen like this, not in front of everybody. Excuse me, Mr. Rose? I stammered as the blonde lady turned me first in one direction and then the other. I was just wondering if maybe I got a dressing room or something. That happens on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. They get a dressing room. Mr. Rose furrowed his brows. That means he made his eyebrows look real annoyed. It's an expression that kids my age don't usually use, but I've had enough brows furrowed at me to know what it means. The main thing about furrowed brows is that they make me nervous. The longer Mr. Rose looked at me like that, the more I began squirming around in my chair. I finally got so self-conscious, I started laughing really stupidly, kind of like Goofy. Oh, I get it, said Mr. Rose, beginning to laugh along with me. We've got ourselves a comedian here. Please don't scare me like that, Alexander. For a minute, I thought you might be one of those spoiled, demanding little child actors I usually get stuck with. I was just about to ask if he meant pudding boy when he suddenly turned away from me. Then he cupped his hands around his mouth and began screaming, "Bring in the cat!" The next thing I knew, I was sitting there with a disgusting giant yellow creature on my lap. Ronald, that was its name. Ronald the cat. Without a doubt, the stupidest cat name I've ever heard in my life. Naming your cat Ronald is like naming your kid Whiskers. Also, just to give you an idea about how giant this cat was, when the trainer dumped it on my lap, I actually went, oof! I'm not kidding. I thought it was a kid in a cat suit. The thing is, I don't even like cats. I mean, I know I have one as a pet and everything, but my parents got Fluffy before I knew how to talk, so I never had a chance to tell them I hated her. I tried to make a few hand signals, but they didn't catch on. Every time a little kid makes hand signals, his parents think he has to go to the bathroom. I finally just got so tired of being rushed away, I decided just to put up with the cat until I was older. Mostly what I hate about cats is the way they're always sneaking up on you. I realize it's probably just the result of being born with fur on your feet, but I still think you could cough when they come in the room, that they could cough when they come in the room, just to let you know they're there. Fluffy's the worst. Sometimes I'll be standing around in the bathroom with nothing on, and all of a sudden I'll look down, and there she is. She's been staring at me the whole time, and I didn't even know it. I've heard her laugh at me before, too. I don't tell that to too many people, but I swear I've heard Fluffy laugh at me about 5 times. Anyway, I could tell right away that the trainer and I didn't feel the same about cats. As soon as the makeup lady left, he patted me on the shoulder and said, "Okay, Clyde, how about if you and Ronald introduce yourselves and get acquainted?" I'm serious. This man actually expected me to say something like, "Hello, Ronald. How's it going, dude?" No offense, I replied, but I'm 12 now, and I don't really talk to cats that much. The trainer looked irritated. "Listen, Sylvester, I don't care if you're 97. If Ronald doesn't feel comfortable with you, this could be a very long day for all of us." I was about to tell the man that my name wasn't Clyde or Sylvester when all of a sudden I looked down and caught Ronald licking the front of my new shirt. "Sick!" I exclaimed, pushing him off my lap as fast as I could. "Cat saliva! Sick!" The trainer picked up Ronald and stomped off. Behind me, Mr. Rose made this little whimpering sound. I recognized it right away. It was the same sound my Little League coach used to use when I'd show up for a game. Like, oh. Furrowing his brows for a second time in only minutes, Mr. Rose pulled a chair beside me. Then he sat there breathing real slowly, like he was trying to keep from losing his temper. I felt insulted, if you want to know the truth. I mean, I know that directors have to put up with a lot of little brats, but I still don't think that I should be treated as one of them. After all, we're talking about a cat saliva problem here. Ooh, sounds like Alex is being a brat. After he got his breathing under control, Mr. Rose put his hand on my shoulder. "Listen, my friend," he said, even though it was plain. Listen, my friend, he said, even though it was plain that I wasn't. I understand that you're not a professional actor, but making commercials is like anything else. If you want to get something accomplished, the magic word is cooperation. Working with animals can be very tricky, and we've got to have cooperation among all of us. You and me and Ronald and Donald, if we want to make this go smoothly. I almost started to laugh. Ronald and Donald? Ronald's trainer is named Donald? Seriously? Ronnie and Donnie? Ron and Don? Ronno and... Enough! Interrupted Mr. Rose. Please, Alexander, let's not make this worse than it already is. Let's just try very hard to cooperate with each other and see if we can't come out with a cute commercial by the end of the day. How about it? Cute? I asked, suddenly getting an uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach. Could you please explain cute to me, Mr. Rose? Nobody sent me a script or anything. I mean, this isn't going to be one of those stupid commercials where a kid has to make a fool of himself, is it? This commercial is very important to me, Mr. Rose. I've got to wipe out a whole lunch line with one giant ha. A giant ha? Repeated the director curiously. I didn't have time to explain. Please, Mr. Rose, I begged. I just don't want to cha-cha with the cat or sing to the fritters, okay? They put people in the nut house for stuff like that, you know. This guy, down the street from my cousin Leon, started talking to his hair, and they had an ambulance come and take him away. Mr. Rose stared at me for a second, then started to laugh again. Relax, Alexander, he said as he stood up. I promise you won't have to cha-cha with Ronald, okay? You have my word on it. Now, if you'll just wait here a minute, I'm going to check the camera angles and we'll be ready to start. Yeah, but wait, I called after him, still feeling uneasy. What about singing to the fritters? Or how about actually talking to the cat? I don't have to carry on a conversation with Ronald, do I? You know, like the kind where the cat nods his head up and down or like he's listening. I mean, I don't mind saying, here, boy, or something like that, but I don't want to act like I value his opinion or anything. Hey, Mr. Rose, I called again, even though by now he was hidden behind one of those huge cameras. Did I remember to tell you that I'm 12? Could we keep that in mind, please? Could we keep in mind that in some parts of the world, boys my age are literally generals in the army? From behind the camera came two hearty laughs, one from Mr. Rose, the other from the cameraman. Then I heard my father's familiar chuckle ring out from the back of the studio. I even thought I heard Donald laughing. For some reason, all of this laughing put me at ease. Laughter does that to me sometimes. It makes me think that everything's going okay. Only this time, it wasn't. This time, I guess you could say, the laugh was on me. It was the stupid kind of commercial, the kind I hate. Not as dumb as Dancing with a Cat, but almost. They made me play the part of a kid about 6, I swear. Mr. Rose kept saying the part was created for a kid any age, but it wasn't. How many 12-year-olds run away from home pulling a little red wagon? That's what I had to do. I had to pretend I was this little sniveling crybaby who was running away from home with this cat. I didn't have any lines to speak. I just had to come into the kitchen wearing a dorky hat and blow my nose like I had been crying. Then I had to struggle to lift a 40-pound bag of kitty fritters into a little red wagon. After that, I had to pick up Fat Ronald, wipe my nose on my sleeve again, and head out the door pulling the wagon. Just as the door was closing behind me, this announcer's voice would come on and say, "Kitty fritters, because sometimes your cat's the only friend you have." It made me want to gag. It really did. When Mr. Rose first showed me the hat, I felt so sick. I had to go to the bathroom and splash water on my face. It was raccoon, the kind Davy Crockett used to wear, the kind with the tail. Oh, a raccoon hat. But I had no choice. You know, Mr. Rose explained the situation very clearly to me. When I started to complain, he sat down and said, "Look, kid, either you do the commercial the way kitty fritter people want it, or you walk." Walk? Exactly what do you mean, walk? Mr. Rose made his fingers walk across the table. Walk, he repeated, As in back to the hotel, back to wherever you came from. Walk. Oh, walk, I said stupidly. So what's it going to be, Alexander? Are we on or are we off? Do you wear the hat and pull the little wagon or don't you? I bent my head and tried to muffle my answer with my hand. I'll pull the stupid wagon. Excuse me, Alexander, I didn't understand you. I said I'll pull the wagon, I repeated gloomily. But I just want you and that cat food guy to know something. I'm going to be 13 in a few months, and in some countries, kids actually get married at 13. Like, take Borneo, I think it is. Somewhere in Borneo, some 13-year-old kid and his wife are going to be highly insulted when they see this. I paused for a second and put my face in my hands. One person will like it, though, I muffled, feeling sick to my stomach. Annabelle Posey will just love seeing me humiliated like this. She'll be pointing at me and laughing for weeks. Mr. Rose ignored me. I guess by then, he had decided that ignoring was the best way to handle me. It's not, though. The best way to handle me is to let me have my own way. We worked on the commercial all day. I'm not sure how many times we filmed it before Mr. Rose was happy. He had an assistant who kept track. Each time we were about to film, the assistant would stand in front of the set with a chalkboard and say, Kitty Fritters commercial, take 1, or Kitty Fritters commercial, take 18, or take 24. I stopped listening after take 32. Ronald was the problem. Ronald the cat. The dumbest animal actor in the entire universe. All he had to do was sit in the middle of the kitchen floor and watch me blow my nose and load the kitty fritters. Then he had to let me pick him up. Think about it. How great an actor do you have to be to let someone pick you up? You could actually be dead and play the part. Not Ronald, though. Every time he'd see me coming, he'd lie down and roll over on his back. Then he'd make his body so limp it was like trying to pick up a cat-shaped jello. To make matters worse, Donald kept running in, shouting, Up, Ronald, up! He waved his arms around like he was training an elephant or something. Finally, Mr. Rose got real annoyed about it. Where the heck did you get this cat, Donald? The morgue? Where they take dead people. Donald took Ronald and stormed off again. This time when they came back, Ronald's face was wet. I guess Donald had been trying to revive him. Anyway, after Ronald had cooperated once or twice and the filming was finally over, we went around shaking hands and lying about how well everything had gone. Then Mr. Rose gave me a pat on the back and Ronald and I shook paws. The kitty fritters man said if I ever came to Cincinnati, he'd take me through the cat food plant and show me how the fritters were made. Oh boy.